Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy announced today he will leave Congress at the end of the year. McCarthy's announcement came in an op-ed at the Wall Street Journal. Talked about his historically slim majority down to a 2-vote margin, that is to say, with McCarthy's absence. McCarthy had been a member of Congress for the last 17 years and was the first person ever ousted from the position of House Speaker. That happened just a little while ago. CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion joins us now from Capitol Hill. Nikole, how did that news land with his Republican colleagues?
Well, in talking to some members, they said they weren't necessarily surprised. I mean, keep in mind the filing deadline for Kevin McCarthy to make a decision as to whether or not he was going to seek re-election was due at the end of this week. So irrespective of his op-ed today, he had to make a decision as to whether or not he would seek another term. I think maybe what surprised some lawmakers is the fact that he said that he would step down by the end of this year, saying that he is going to turn his passions into a new arena. But look, there is a lot of bad blood that is still left from the speaker's race, not just at the beginning of the year, but obviously the one that took place this fall when McCarthy was ousted. And while McCarthy at the time said that he has no regrets for the decisions he made and how he handled himself as a leader, it really was something that was very upsetting, particularly to allies of Kevin McCarthy. And many of them kind of reiterated that today, that they are upset about how this all went down in terms of the motion to vacate, trying to force him out, particularly with respect to those 8 lawmakers who were the ones who ultimately forced his ouster. And one of those lawmakers, Congressman Matt Gaetz, I spoke to him just a short time ago, and I asked him for his reaction. He said that he wishes the former speaker well, but when I asked him if he feels like he is responsible for driving McCarthy out, he said, well, I'm not the one who asked him to resign. He's the one who made that decision for himself.
Yes, I'm sure Matt Gaetz wishes the former speaker well, but he is the one who filed the motion to vacate, setting in motion the ousting of the former speaker. That's just exactly the way Washington phraseology sometimes lands. Nikole, catch us up on the status, as you know it, of negotiations in the Senate on combining aid to Ukraine, aid to Israel, and changes in border policy.
Well, it's not a great outlook here on Capitol Hill. I mean, as you know, Major, for several weeks now, at least particularly here in the Senate, there have been these ongoing discussions over border security and border policy. That is something that many congressional Republicans have insisted need to be part of any national security supplemental package for it to move forward, particularly as it relates to providing additional funding for Ukraine. So much so that there was quite a heated briefing just yesterday on the Hill, particularly on the Senate side, where they were briefed by members of the administration, and it turned into a bit of a shouting match over some of the concerns that congressional Republicans have. And, even just today, we heard from President Biden, who urged Congress to act and was really gave some strong words and a stern rebuke for Congress and not doing anything on this. Take a listen.
Frankly, I think it's stunning that we've gotten to this point in the first place. While Republicans in Congress are willing to give Putin the greatest gift he could hope for and abandon our global leadership, not just in Ukraine, but beyond that.
So even as concerned as the president is about this, the likelihood that the Congress will move forward on this seems relatively slim as we get ready to go into the holiday recess, Major.
Nikole Killion on Capitol Hill, thank you very much.